So often his advice is being given in a micro picture. He only has one little tiny piece of the picture and he's giving blanket advice. I can tell you right now that any person who's giving you financial advice and is not asking about your big picture does not have your best interest in mind. Hey everybody, Derick Van Ness here, investor, wealth strategist, life adventurer, and I've got a doozy for you today, especially if you love Dave Ramsey, because I'm going to talk about what Dave Ramsey gets wrong and what you need to know about it. And listen, he's one of the most popular people out there. The guy made $30 million, I heard last year, giving financial advice. And here's the crazy part. He gives tough advice to a lot of people, and a lot of people take that as a good thing, right? We want this discipline. We think we need to be better with our money, save more, all that stuff. And much of that is true. But here's the thing. He gets a couple of fundamental things right, and he plays on your emotions to get you there, right? All of us want freedom. All of us want to spend time with our family. We all want to live a life that we love, right? So he plays on that, and he helps you believe that your freedom is all about certain sets of rules. And really the carrot that he puts out there is that if you can become debt-free, then you're going to be free. And I'm just here to tell you that's not the case. Here's the reason why debt-free doesn't work, right? He tells you not to take on any debt, to get your house paid off fast, to get your loans paid off fast. All that sounds really, really good, but here's the truth of the matter is if you follow Dave Ramsey's advice from the very beginning, then you wouldn't get an education, right? Because you wouldn't go into debt for school. You probably wouldn't buy a car because most people can't pay cash for a car. You wouldn't buy a house until you could pay cash for that. For most people, that's 30, 40 years down the road of saving, right? And so a lot of people are being misled that debt is a bad thing. The truth is debt can be a terrible thing, but it can be a very, very constructive thing. Listen, if you took on 40, 50,000 or a reasonable amount of school debt to become a professional and get a great job and move forward in your life, that's a real positive. If you go out and go into debt so you can get a car, so you can get to work, so you can do things and live the life that you want to live, that's a great thing. If you go out and you buy a house before you can pay cash for it, so you have a place to raise your kids and your family, that can be a great thing, right? Now the other thing here is that he's often telling you that once you get rid of all these debts, that you're going to be in a great place. The problem is if all you're doing is chopping down debts, especially cheap debts like home mortgage debt or a lot of student loan debt, it doesn't make sense because if you're paying off a 3.5% mortgage, you're only saving 3.5% interest on that money. You can take that money, earn elsewhere, and I did a whole video that I'll link to at the end of this video that talks about how to pay your house off faster. I even used Dave's calculator in that video to show you how to pay your house off fast, but also to do it safely. Because here's the problem. Taking all your extra money and piling it towards paying off debt, especially super cheap debt, does two things. One, it takes away your ability to earn on those dollars. In a lot of cases, you can safely earn a whole lot more than 3.5% or 4% on your money, and you'll be earning more than you would have saved in paying down your mortgage or your student loans, right? The second thing you're doing is if you're taking all that extra money and you're piling it into paying off student loan debts or you're piling it into paying off your home, is that you're dwindling your savings and your liquidity and you're piling it up in equity. The problem with equity, or if you pay extra towards your student loans, is if you get in a tight spot and you don't have any savings because you've been putting it all toward debt, now you might have to go back into debt further, or you might lose your house, or you might default on your student loans and create all kinds of problems, right? So we have to be smart about debt pay down. The other big conversation that he has with a lot of people is buy term and invest the difference versus something like whole life insurance. I'm here to tell you that the conversation that is being had on his show is a very, very skewed conversation, right? He believes that you don't need life insurance past a certain age. He believes that the stock market's always going to go up and it's going to do well for you over time. But here's the thing. The stock market and term insurance are both unpredictable, right? Here's the problem with term insurance. Once you're done with it, like 10, 20 years from now, you don't know how much it's going to cost to get more if you need it. And how do you know how you're going to feel when you're 50, 60, 70 What if you want life insurance? Those options have been taken away if you wait that long because it does become quite expensive. With life insurance, he talks about how it doesn't build cash value forever, how it's totally inefficient. And the truth is, if an agent sets it up incorrectly, some of that can be true, but there's actually, just like every product out there, there's a right way to use it, and there's a way to minimize fees, and there's a way to maximize cash growth. So it's a very, very slanted view on the whole thing. I would urge you to look further into the actual numbers of life insurance and done properly. And the term you'll want to look at is what I call max funded whole life insurance. I don't like indexed universal life, and I have a whole video on that too that you can see on my YouTube channel where I break down exactly why I don't like it. And it's many of the same reasons I don't like buy term and invest the difference, and I think Dave's getting it wrong. And it's really this. With buy term and invest the difference, you're stuck in a vehicle that's going to go up and down. I don't think anybody would dispute that the stock market's volatile. So you don't know where you're going to end up. Now they use these averages and say over time the market's averaged a certain amount, but averages are a lie. Here's what I mean. If you put your right hand in a bucket of boiling hot water and you put your left hand in a bucket of freezing cold water, so both hands are probably really hurting, on average it should feel lukewarm. That's not true. That's not the experience of what happens. And the same thing with your money. If the money goes way up and goes way down and you average it out, it might seem okay. Let me give you an example. Earlier this year, we had the market drop 35%. Then the market came back up 40%. So on average, we should be ahead a couple of percentage points. But the reality was that we didn't even get back to where things were before the drop in March. How does that happen? Well, when it drops 35%, let's say it's $1 million you had in there, it drops down to 665,000. 40% up isn't 40% up of $1 million, it's 40% up of 665,000, which is closer to 300,000, right? So you're still down about 10% or of that change, so still down 3, 4, 5%. Averages are completely misleading. So when you start giving financial advice based on averages, you're not telling the truth about what happens. Yeah, the math is true, but it's not what actually happens with your money. And none of that figures in fees that your stock market people get, whether it goes up or it goes down. So that's another big myth that I believe Dave is perpetuating that isn't serving people. If you want to know more about that, check out some of the other videos on my channel, or you can reach out to my firm. We'd be happy to have more in-depth conversations, okay? Now, the third thing that I think he's getting wrong is every decision you make financially should be done with everything else in mind. Like oftentimes he'll get someone on the radio show and they're like, hey, I bought this life insurance policy, or I bought this stock, or I put money into gold and silver, or I bought this house. Should I have done that? And the question is this: what's going on in the rest of your life? Like, should you have bought this stock if you've got $100,000 of credit card debt? Probably not. Should you have bought this stock if you've got $10 million sitting in a trust waiting for you? Sure, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? So often his advice is being given in a micro picture. He only has one little tiny piece of the picture, and he's giving blanket advice. I can tell you right now that any person who's giving you financial advice and is not asking about your big picture does not have your best interest in mind. They're trying to sell you their product. They're trying to look at one little tiny piece, but the truth is that's not how money and finances work, and that's not how your life works, right? You can't just look at a money decision. For example, if you bought a rental property and you and your husband or wife used to fight every single night about that because you hate rental property, even if it's a positive cash flow, that's a net loss for you. It might be more money in your pocket, but I promise you it's taking its toll on your relationships and your health and your happiness, right? So we need to look at the big picture of things. And I believe that most of the advice given on his radio show and on his YouTube channel is not doing that. So when you work with an advisor, when you work with someone who's a strategist, when you work with a tax person, make sure you're working with people who are looking at your big picture and then seeing how this piece fits into it. Because every single domino in your financial plan and your life impacts all the other dominoes. And if one falls, it might knock all the others down. So those are three big things that I think Dave Ramsey is getting wrong and that you need to really reconsider. If you want to look at alternatives, there are a lot of other things out there, but I'm just telling you right now, the stuff that he's teaching sounds good in theory. Averages, freedom from debt, and giving a specific piece of advice on one little tiny portion of your financial strategy, but they don't work in the real world. So it's great TV, it's not great reality. And I want to make sure that if you're going to be taking control of your finances, listening to people who know what they're talking about, then that you're working with people who understand your situation, how to get you where you want to go, because ultimately that's how finances work in creating a life that you love. So if you want to hear a little bit more about that, you want to see my breakdown on universal life insurance and why I don't like it, because universal life insurance is to some extent a buy term and invest the different strategy put into life insurance, you can check out that video here. Otherwise, if you have other questions, please comment below. If you like this content, please comment below, subscribe, and if you subscribe, leave us a comment. Say, hey, I subscribed, so I know you're a new person. I could reach out to you personally, welcome you to the group, and we're really looking to grow this channel. We'd love your support. And if you know anybody who loves Dave Ramsey, please make sure they watch this video so that they don't get caught up in some of that generalized stuff that looks good on paper but doesn't work in real life. My name's Derick Van Ness. I appreciate you taking some time today, and I look forward to talking to you on the next video.